So this is LATTAFA's ASAD Bourbon, and it's a fragrance that everyone's been talking about. It's like just when you thought LATTAFA couldn't outdo themselves, then boom, they drop an atomic bourbon bombshell. So today, we're unpacking LATTAFA's ASAD Bourbon, and we're going to determine exactly why this one is the talk of the town. Starting with the price, and I know that's not exactly where we tend to start fragrance reviews, but it seems like every time I post a LATTAFA fragrance on Instagram, someone's hitting me up wanting to know how and where I purchase these fragrances for these insane prices. So if you end up liking what you hear about this fragrance or just want to check out some other fragrances out there, then be sure to head over to fragrancebuy.ca because they tend to have some of the best pricing in the game, especially when it comes to these LATTAFA fragrances. But price aside, the question is this one worth having in your collection? Now, if you're big on presentation, I'm not sure there's anything to be overly excited about with this one, because when you look at it, it's really what we've gotten with ASAD and ASAD Zanzibar. However, what I will mention is that this brown and gold combo does look pretty nice. Pretty much you just get that classic LATTAFA ASAD feel, but with this one you get just a bit more oomph. But don't let this fancy look fool you. We're really here for the juice, so let's go ahead and hop into it. Now, right out of the gate, there's this blast of pepper in the scent, and there's also this ever so slightly subtle chemical nature to this scent, but in order to experience that, you really gotta get your nose right on in there. You know what really grinds my gears there is that when I hear people complain about things like that, I always wonder, like, in what scenario in the real world would that happen? That you immediately spray a fragrance and someone just dives in nose deep to determine what it smells like. In most cases, that's not gonna happen. So you don't have to really worry about that ever so subtle, slightly touch of that chemical nature. That comes and it goes extremely quickly. But anyway, what do I know? Listen, at the top of this fragrance, you're set to have pink pepper, you're also gonna have some lavender, and there's some plum here as well. In the heart of this fragrance, there's cacao, there's nutmeg, and there's also some davana. And then in the base here, there's some vetiver, some bourbon vanilla, and then there's also some amber. Now earlier I mentioned that there's this blast of spice on the first spray, and that comes to you on account of that pink pepper, but it's not there alone. The lavender and marabelle plum add this slightly sweet tart, but also woody undertone. I mean, overall, it gives off this blend of this spicy, sweet cocktail of just all around goodness. However, it still comes off as smooth and soothing, and that pink pepper is still there, but it doesn't drift off too far away from the opening. Now, in my opinion, in the heart of this fragrance is where things begin to shift a bit, and it begins to take an enjoyable, easygoing, warm turn. But it also kicks up the wear factor because, in my opinion, that's what we're all here for. In the mid and in the base are where all those seductive notes lie. And when you have this fragrance with this expectation and these notes, well, you want it to be seductive. I mean, and truly, that's where all of those notes come to life. So you get that amber, you get the bourbon vanilla, you get the nutmeg, and also that cacao. It's funny though, because I was just bringing this one upstairs from downstairs in the testing factor, and my son and my wife wanted to try this one out, and they were asking about it. And when my son was like, "Oh, is this one that new one?" I was like, "Yeah, it is." And he wanted to know if it was going to be deeper, darker, richer, and I explained to him what the notes were, and the missus didn't get that off the break. She's like, "Well, it smells pretty spicy." I'm like, "You know what? You're right, because in the heart of this fragrance is where all of those seductive notes come to life." And I thought it was great when I said it to her, and it's great when I'm saying it to you. Now, some of the other notes that you get here are the davana and the vetiver here. Now, they don't take a super earthy twist here. It just adds a nice, warm, woody undertone to the scent that I believe helps balance this one out. But also, I feel like the nutmeg and the cacao here are really some of the stars of the show, and they pair together extremely well, like a nice dessert on a fall night. Try imagine sipping on a creamy spiced hot chocolate while sitting next to a wood burning fire. That's kind of how this one feels. Once it dries down, it's incredibly smooth, it's sexy, and it lingers for hours. Now, some of you hit me up saying that this one smelled like Jean-Paul Gaultier's Scandal, while others hit me up and said this one was more along the lines of Azzaro's The Most Wanted. Now, I do not own JPG's Scandal, and as I smell this one side by side to Azzaro's The Most Wanted, it doesn't smell like a one-for-one. This scent does smell amazing. When we talk about like what it relates back to, as I mentioned, I don't find it to be an exact one-for-one for Azzaro's The Most Wanted. And since I don't own JPG's Scandal, I can't give you an adequate take there. But what I can tell you is that if you're looking for a fragrance to wear in the fall and or winter, specifically on those cooler nights, that this is one of those fragrances that will allow you to do so. Now, I want to make sure that I am speaking with intention, because when I say cooler nights, this one can be worn during the daytime. I think that this one is a perfect fragrance for that playboy out there who wants to make sure that when he approaches the ladies, he's in prime form. I mean, simply put, when it all boils down, LATTAFA understood the assignment. Performance-wise, it's solid, and it'll easily get you through most of the day or most of the night, as you can expect 6 to 8 hours with this one. Look, it's not beast mode, but it also has enough projection and enough sillage to make sure that you don't go unnoticed. And with this, for a fragrance that comes in for under $40, you're really getting luxury vibes without breaking the bank. And here's my thoughts here. As the year progresses and the hype on this fragrance begins to die down, there's a potential for this one to dip just a bit. And if it falls below that $30 mark, that's what I'm calling a steal. And speaking of steals, in case you missed it yesterday, we're in the final hours of my buy one, get one 25% off sale at fragrancebuy.ca. Just use my code BBB25 and they're gonna hook you up with 25% off of your second bottle. Buy one, get one 25% off, and that just makes things even more valuable. Remember, you only got 48 hours, so head over to fragrancebuy.ca to pick up your bottle of ASAD Bourbon or any fragrances that you've been looking at. Now, if you are confused on what to pick up, then click here to see 10 LATTAFA fragrances every man must own.